What exactly did he do that was different than anyone else? What did he give you for inspiration?
He gave me a
ideas?
script and said, read the part of. And I cold read any script he handed me without thinking about it, without watching myself, without getting up in my head. I just read the part. And that's how he changed me, because there was a script to serve.
My first play that I wrote was Silent Quest, which was about the Native Americans and the priest that was on their reservation, and was one of the priests, like the ones in Boston, who was committing sexual acts on the children there.
Silent Quest by Don Jameson.
Act 1, Scene 1, Reservation.
You could almost not figure out what a Tom Thornton style was, because there were so many of them, and he was so good at all. He had been a writer and an editor and a ghostwriter for things like Barclay Books, and he had to rewrite or ghostwrite a lot of stuff for a lot of people, and he had a lot of funny stories about that, which I won't mention because, there is something called slander.
I interviewed a number of Native people, and when it got to the cardinal, Tom had such specific instructions, because he really saw himself as the cardinal, which he did a great job with. His acting talent just shone through, and so he was in at least a couple of the readings of it.
A native dancer dances around Robert and hands him a ceremonial knife. Robert takes it, but then gives it back. The scene ends and the lights come up on the rectory.
The first reading was at the American Indian Community House, and he was not part of it, but he was my dramaturg on the side. And one of the readings, he was a young boy, the young Native boy.
Georgie, a young teenager, perhaps 13, Native American boy, rushes in without knocking.
Excuse me, Father.
Come in, Georgie.
I'm sorry, Father, but Mrs. Peabody heard you drop the phone and thought, well, maybe you had another heart attack or something.
I didn't drop the phone, Georgie. I threw it down because I talked to a very stupid man in Rhode Island.
Was he stupid because he doesn't study?
No, because he isn't aware of what is happening right under his nose. Well, perhaps I am unfair. He may have more pressing concerns. But as for Mrs. Peabody...
Yes, Father.
You tell her I'm quite all right. She's overprotective. Or is it you who's overly curious? I've learned to let my anger out and ask the good Lord to teach me patience.
My mother asked the Lord to teach her patience all the time.
I'm quite sure that's true, Georgie. What's that in your hand?
It's your mail, Father. It came back.
It did?
Afraid so.
He ended up as the cardinal, which I always saw him as, and really appreciated his help with it.
And few of us knew him when he was young. A child, a teenager, and that's part of Tom Thornton also. So again, we can't sum up his life. We can't say everything about him. We can't reveal all his thoughts and hopes and dreams that went with him.
We've done lots of, not only just readings, but we've also done plays together. We did Arthur Little Round Table. They were full productions. And probably my favorite one was when we did Bullard over on the USS Intrepid. We did that like 3 times in 3 different locations. And I actually have some video of that. So all of us will treasure that, because I can see Tom and myself together acting. Chauncey was in it and Dawn was in it. And I think one time we did it and the Tuskegee Airmen showed up. So that was a wonderful experience. That was another one that I'll always treasure.
We were set up to do a series of military-themed plays, or something having to do with military issues, on the Intrepid, which we were going to do 1 a month. And after we did the second one, we'd done Time Limit, and then we did one of our own playwrights' plays. And after the second one, Tom and I had the fellow who had hired us to do that, who we had struck the deal with, had quit. And the new guy wasn't too interested in theater, so we had a meeting with him. And one of the things we suggested we could also do to help out with the Intrepid is we could have actresses who could play USO, singers, actually sing songs. This was for the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Midway in 1942, which we were which was 75 years later, which we said we can help you commemorate it. And we can have actors play people in the CIC and on the bridge, and people can come in and see what was really going on, so we could act out what was really going on during the battle.
Okay.
And the guy said, well, the USS Intrepid wasn't built during the Battle of Midway, so we're not going to celebrate it. And I said, well, are you going to celebrate anything? He said, yeah, we're going to celebrate the attack on Pearl Harbor. And Tom said, well, wait a second. The Battle of Midway happened in 1942. And he said, yeah, but you don't want to do that because the Intrepid wasn't built then. He said, yeah, but you want to do Pearl Harbor. He said, yeah. He said, that was in 1941. Since when does 1941 come after 1942? So actually, Tom and I walked out of there, and we were ticked off. Even though we were ticked off that we were losing this gig and this guy was an idiot, we couldn't stop laughing.
Father Robert angrily adds the envelopes to the other pile of letters.
I've gotten a lot of those lately, abruptly changing subjects. I heard you singing before, the choir, I mean, although I can always pick out your voice.
I sing too loud, huh?
No. You're allowed 24 hours a day, Georgie. Why should it be different in the choir?
I just want to be heard. I'm going to be one of the 3 Seneca tenors.
Well, every journey begins with a single step.
You said to me, we used to all go out afterwards and talk about things, and you said to me, you don't come every week, Donna. And I said, well, no, I'm busy and this and that. And you said, no, you must come every week. If you want to grow as an actor and learn about plays, you must come every week. That was really strong, and all of a sudden I could hear what Tom was doing, that it wasn't about just playwrights getting actors to read their plays.
Well, he didn't get my name right for the first few times. I think you should edit that out because that's negative.
No, it's not
But
negative.
okay, so it's a little funny how he kind of, I think he
now.
called me Mike the first few times I came. But also, one striking thing about him, it's not a big story, but that he would always, if there was an interruption in the play development reading, he would stop. He wanted everybody to be attentive to the play, to the work, to the piece. So he would stop and until the distraction was over.
So why are you sending out so many letters, Father?
Georgie grabs a pink while you are out pad that he spots on Father Robert's desk.
Robert tries to stop him, but Georgie dances away. Father Robert, Cardinal O'Keefe called and said the Cardinal regrets that he cannot discuss the matter with you and asks that you do not continue to attempt to reach him. He will contact you at a convenient time. Whatever, right, Father?
And so I went on the road, and I was gone for like 3 months or something. And while I was gone, I opened one of my emails, and I saw that TSP had started a podcast where they were going to present plays. And then I found that Tom had posted my little play on the first podcast. And I was like, oh my God, I was so shocked and so flattered. And I thought that was just wonderful, a wonderful thing that he did. It really boosted my ego because I didn't know, if I was going to be accepted or if my material was going to be liked.
I'm not an actor. I met Tom through his friend Mike Jankowitz about 15 years ago. Some years back, I attended a reading that they did, and Tom really stood out from the other people doing readings in that he effortlessly went into his character. He became that person. You immediately became invested in what he was reading and what he was doing. And this was just on a stage, no props, no scenery, no costumes. Tom did what actors aspire to do, become the character and cease being an actor.
He had to juggle actors, that he gave them something fulfilling to do, so they would come back week after week. Especially he wanted to encourage actors that were useful, good actors, and he wanted to encourage playwrights, so he had to get the playwrights up, week after week that he could, and he had to juggle all this. And I took my breath away that he was able to do that, and Sometimes he would come to me, do you have a part for Vic? Do you have a part for so-and-so? Do you have a part for so-and-so? And I would pull it out, because he felt somebody is a good actor and had been unrepresented.
Leap of Faith by David Schmidt. Father Ryan talks to the Monsignor.
Monsignor, why are you closing our school?
The diocese cannot afford to keep it open.
Well, what about the surplus from the fund drive?
Don't you know about the lawsuits?
Lawsuits?
Sexual allegations.
Involving priests?
Don't you read the papers?
Is it that bad?
Yeah, Leap of Faith is a guy coming to a chasm that's famous for people committing suicide, and he's about to jump off. And this girl comes and talks him out of it, and he doesn't do it.
Don't you read the papers?
Is it that bad?
Lawyers are soliciting for victims, and they keep finding them. You wouldn't know of any victims, would you, that are about to surface?
God, I hope not.
Well, it's not what I hoped you'd say. Some form of no would reassure me. God, I hope not frightens me to death.
I'm sorry.
Then you know of someone?
One.
And then he goes, and he starts to walk down and figures he'll walk down with her, and she's disappeared. Because she knows that's not the way to do it.
But not from personal experience, I trust. Is that a yes? Now don't tell me that. I need a drink.
Goes to cabinet, gets drink.
Please reassure me he's not someone underage.
No.
Thank God.
At least not anymore.
One drink just isn't going to do it this time, I'm afraid.
Goes back to cabinet. I'm really sorry.
Just how long has this been going on?
A permanent solution to a temporary problem, as suicide generally is. And that illustrates that one piece. And Tom is welcome to it. And, I mean, he knew me. He knew that anything, I was always happy with whatever he did.
What is it that you want from me?
How unexpected. You caught me off guard.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Now let me ask you, why do you keep seducing priests?
I don't.
Well, don't tell me they're seducing you.
No.
And then when I finally, I was coming back to the business after another career, and I got in a play, and Tom gave me the information about how to work with that director, because the director became very difficult, and I got really nervous. He's the one who took me over the hump and made me believe in myself and in doing the play, and I felt I was successful, and I guess that was the most important thing.
Scene 3, Father Ryan and Melissa.
I have to tell you something.
Yes?
It has to stop.
What?
You and me. I can't keep seeing you.
Well, stop looking at me then and you won't see me. That's better. She kisses him.
Please, you know that it has to stop.
What has to stop?
You'll find out when Monsignor calls you in.
I guess one of the great things I can always say, remember about Tom. No matter what you're doing in life, no matter how hard you have to work to write a script, to read a ton of scripts, to cast them, to act in them, direct them, always take time out to enjoy life. And no matter how hard we work, that's one thing we did at the end of the day. We went out and enjoyed ourselves.
One of the main things I remember about Tom is his amazing sense of humor. Well, I remember one night at the Workshop Theater Company, we were doing a reading of one of his plays, Pathet Lao, which is set in Cambodia. And at a point in the play, explosions go off. So anyway, we do the reading, and then one of the people who's critiquing at the Workshop Theater says, I have a note for your play, Tom, that will make it 100 times better. And Tom goes, oh, well, what's that? He says, well, I think the explosions that are happening off stage, they should happen on stage. And Tom goes, well, that's great, except I have to replace the cast every night.
I was doing a reading for him of his play Pathet Lao, and afterwards I noticed the expression on his face when somebody came up and said, well, I don't understand. Why couldn't you have the explosions on stage? And that's when Tom knew we probably needed another theater group. We actually did form it about a year or two later, and after Lawrence Holder recommended that we should start doing it at that point.
He must have told you then. I told him everything.
I know, you're such a manhole cover. What did you tell him?
When he was bound to find out.
Tom was one of the first people who ever believed in me as a writer. I remember I'd written this play, and I just kind of gave it to him. He took it and he read it, and he always had something intelligent, something insightful to say about anything, not just me, but anybody could come to TSP at any writing level, and Tom would take their work and would try to help them bring greatness out of it, no matter what. And I really admired that. That was something really great about him.
It's wrong.
So, will you marry me?
Where do I find a priest who'd marry us?
You're a priest. You do it.
It's too late. He knows.
He knows you lied to him.
How's that?
I contradicted everything you said.
You did?
Now, marry me.
And how impossible is that?
To marry me? You told me it would take a leap of faith.
A leap of faith and then some.
Many years ago, I was in a reading of a play called Real Black Men Don't Sit Cross-Legged on the Floor. And the late Arthur French was also in that play. That was done at the Henry Street Settlement. And Tom was in the audience. He saw it. Then afterwards, he came up to me, said how much he liked my performance. And he said that he was involved in a playwriting group with Lawrence Holder. And I happen to know Lawrence Holder. So he said, would you like to come along? I said, sure, you know. So I went, and that's where I first met Dawn. There was just a couple of us sitting around the table. And then we just went on for a couple of weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. But the program had to end. And then Lawrence said, well, just because we can't do it here, that doesn't mean that you guys can't continue it. And that was the birth of Times Square Playwrights. I was right there in the beginning.
I believe I took a leap of faith. I leaped into the lion's den and lied my head off. King? Why would I do that for anybody else? I am fidelity itself. And did you see me leap?
And he believed you?
Ask him if you don't believe me.
Me and Tom never had an argument. Never really had a disagreement. But one thing we always had a problem with: who found who? And since Tom is not here, I'll tell my side of the story, and that'll be the end of this. I went down to Equity. I had an end with Equity where I could go into the archives and look at pictures. And I was directing a piece, and I needed a thug, kind of a hard-looking kind of guy. And I found a picture of Tom there. I gave him a call, and he came to do the piece. Did a wonderful job. And after it was over, he hung around, and me and him became buddies, and he said, I have a workshop. You ought to come and check out my workshop. And I showed up. I read at that workshop. And from then on, we became buddies.
Come in. So you're asking him to leave the priesthood?
No.
Well, what are you asking him then?
For him to tell me I'm his one and only.
Yes, I said I'd marry you.
Did I ask that?
What are you asking?
Say it.
But
you are my one and only.
And that's all I want.
When they release me from my vows,
But his writing still survives. and will survive.
Why would they do that?
Because. Ask any priest.
But we're not asking any priest, we're asking this one.
What makes this one different?
This one understands theology. You've written books. Most priests don't have a clue.
And I just had a fall Friday. I took a picture of the outside of this place, and I walked across the street to the UN to get a taxi, and my sandal caught on something, and I fell right smack onto my face. I really miss Tom, because I really could have called him immediately and said what was happening as I was sitting in the emergency room, and he would have, kind of helped me through it, encouraged me like he encouraged me for my first audition, and encouraged me for my first play that I ever wrote.
Father Robert Weston, the hunter from the fantasy sequence, sits at his desk and makes a phone call. In the background, we hear the choir practicing as well. This church singing goes on quietly throughout the scene.
I was being informed in a way that no class, no teacher had ever informed me. I learned from the playwrights coming in and Tom's working with his critique of them, what plays were really about, how they were constructed, what was well done, what wasn't. And it became really fun to go to plays and say, oh, wow, they shouldn't have done that, or, that's too long. Tom would have said this, and Tom would have said that.
Does God demand it?
What am I supposed to say?
The answer to my question. Does God demand it?
No, except he took a vow.
And if he breaks the vow, is that a mortal sin?
Yes, if he thinks it is.
And if he thinks it isn't?
Then it's not.
He made it into a real working machine that people saw their work done, people saw it done well, people got good feedback and were able to write. So it became a real writing workshop, and the proof of that pudding was the number of people that would come back to TSP. And I remember one of them with the comment, you know what makes you appreciate TSP? I said, what? He said, it's the other workshops that you go to, and then you know.
He'll leave the priesthood if you want. Do you want that?
No.
He's a good priest.
Is he?
He's the best you've got.
He is.
That makes him good.
How?
He's the best you've got. If he's not good, then no one else is.
Ah, touche. Well, we're in an area of gray.
Where we should stay.
Okay, last year during COVID, Tom and I, and sometimes other people, met in outdoor diners, and if it was just the two of us, we talked. If there was one more person than two, then we would read a script or part of a script. We'd sit in the freezing cold through the wintertime, trying to get near a heater, but we always met. Every time I was in town, we met. And that man changed my life.
Wait, I don't understand.
He doesn't understand.
I know he doesn't. How can I explain it?
I know he doesn't. How can I explain it?
Let me. Do you understand the color white and black? Mix both of them together, what happens to them?
What?
Something in between.
I don't
like it.
Do you hate it?
No.
That's love-hate then.
I love you.
The way that Tom and I first became friends was after having all these elevated conversations about theater, I found out that Tom knew very well an author named Michael Avallone, who was a mystery espionage writer who never made it that big, but he wrote the first Man from U.N.C.L.E. book, which I was a big fan of when I was a kid in the 60s, and that really impressed me. I mean, I said, Tom, of all the celebrities that people claim to know, I said, that strikes a nerve, because I loved that book. And he also told me how little the guy got paid for it, and that he wrote it in 24 hours.
And I'd hate to leave you.
So?
Leave it alone then, can you? Can you?
I can.
I can. Let's all have a drink, okay?
Insane.
All right. So.
Because they're gonna.
Hi, I'm Mark. I didn't know Tom for very long, but the short time I knew him, I saw only good things. He was very welcoming. He was very friendly and polite, supportive. He gave great feedback on plays, and he knew his stuff, and I was very impressed. I learned a lot from him.
Tom has been my friend for 34 years, and we had weekly lunches to talk about our plays and life in general. And he was always the one that I called when I had a decision to make concerning my art, concerning my acting, or concerning my writing. And we would get together and discuss it. And it's very typical that when he had a health problem or I had a health problem, we would confide in each other.
Can I help, Father?
Pointing at the letters.
I'm a good detective.
It's nothing, Georgie. I've been trying to contact someone I knew in the church, but all the letters come back address unknown.
Is it someone I know?
Heavens, no. It's someone I knew a long time ago.
An old friend, huh?
Not really. Just somebody I need to find.
And let me say this. I lost another friend earlier this year. His name was Andre Maitland. And Andre represented to me, this is what we're going to do. When we leave high school, we're going to go to Marvel Comics. We're going to make films. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. He represented the future. Tom, to me, represented experience. We've done those things. We've been those places. We've met those people.
Well, I really am a good detective.
I'm sure you are, but I think what I need is a lawyer's help. Is your Aunt Helen around?
Oh, she's been kind of sick.
Yes, I've been praying for her. I'd like to pay her a visit.
Oh, she's not home. She drove over to talk to Suzanne Beechtree.
The clan mother? Really?
Robert looks down at his desk but remains seated.
Okay. I guess I can call her tomorrow.
And he did this, and I said to myself, you know what, this is a group for me. And from that moment on, I tried to stick with the group, and even when I'd go out of town for like 3-4 months, I would always come back, and Tom would always greet me warmly and as if I just left yesterday. And I remember that about him, and I'm going to miss that about him. He was always very welcoming to me.
And one of my favorite things to do was after we'd read something, was that Tom and I would go to a bar and have a couple of drinks. And that is what I'll miss the most.
I will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early for once.
Oh, no. Actually, I just came to say goodbye. My dad works in the city tomorrow. He's starting on Monday.
He's an iron worker, right?
Yeah, him and my dad helped build a lot of buildings by walking the high beams.
I do know that. You must be very proud.
We're going to live with my Uncle Louie now in Brooklyn.
Well, that will be a big change for you, and for our choir. Well, I'm sorry you'll be leaving us. Of course, there will be more opportunities for you in the city.
Yeah, maybe I can go to the High School for Performing Arts or get on some TV show.
Perhaps you should stay with a church choir for now.
Okay, but I'll show you, Fada. I'm going to show everybody. Well.
Yes, you have to go. God bless you, Georgie.
You too, Fada.
Georgie, you take care. I'll miss you.
Georgie exits.